Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 29. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation, as we get an eye towards week number 4 already against the Indianapolis Colts. Pittsburgh will be on the road for that one, but we're in that in-between period of looking back on week 3, looking ahead to week 4, and everything else in between. Got some roster moves, got the Tomlin Tuesday, got some All-22 we've been through since we last spoke. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Wednesday, and I've been able to crack open the little bit of Indianapolis tape already earlier in the week. I'm getting some stuff done earlier in the week this week that makes me feel a little bit more productive, and going to be fun to preview that game. The Steelers got a chance to go 4-0 on Sunday in Indianapolis. How strange is this as well, too? 3 road games in the first 4 games on top of it here. But this definitely shakes out as one that this team can win. So we'll talk more about that on Friday, obviously. But we got a lot of housekeeping, I think, to get out of the way here first, don't we?
We do. Pittsburgh making several roster moves and unfortunately dealing with some injuries, and the most notable name among them, well, really 2 of them, are outside linebacker Alex Highsmith with his groin and cornerback Corey Trice with his hamstring injury. Trice placed on injured reserve yesterday by the team, so he'll miss at least the next 4 weeks. Hopefully can come back right after that, but his status unknown beyond the minimum IR time. Suffered that hamstring injury on that first punt against the Chargers on Sunday. And so in a flurry of roster moves, the team putting Trice on IR. They already had an open roster spot because of Troy Fautanu going on IR. So to replace those 2 spots on the 53-man roster, the team officially signing cornerback James Pierre from the practice squad to the 53. We talked about that Monday. That was going to happen sooner or later. In this case, sooner. They've also signed some tackle depth since Fautanu is out, presumably for the rest of the season, signing former New England Patriot and I believe Denver Bronco Calvin Anderson to the 53-man roster. Pittsburgh also doing some practice squad shuffling because of the injury to Highsmith. They signed back linebacker Marcus Haynes, who was with the team in training camp, and they cut tight end Matt Sokol, who was also with the team midway through training camp. Michael Pruitt still seems like he's going to be out this week, but a team can get by with a tight end group that they have right now. So Highsmith going to probably miss a couple of games here. He seems to have avoided IR, which is positive. Trice unfortunately did not.
Yeah, and we'll know for sure when it comes to Highsmith by Saturday to see if there's any additional roster moves. But most of the reports seem to be that he's going to avoid IR and hopefully be back within that 4-week span. Only missed 2 to 3 games. Unfortunate there. Boy, Corey Trice Jr. can't catch a break, can he? Going to at least now miss the next 4 games, so hopefully he'll be able to get over that hamstring injury and get back in the fold around the middle of the season there. I think we have the team has 1 open practice squad spot at this time. They being down another corner in Corey Trice, you kind of wonder if maybe we will get some word, maybe even during this show, about them filling that extra practice squad spot, and possibly even with a cornerback. They did work out C.J. Henderson, former first-round draft pick last week, and I think he remains unsigned at least at the time that we're starting this recording. So we'll just have to wait and see what they fill that with. They could definitely use probably another. And look, C.J. Henderson's got some experience, obviously, in the league, and's got some pedigree. But we'll see how they fill that spot. The new tackle. What do you know about the new tackle?
Yeah, he was undrafted back in, I think, 2019. He's played both tackle spots throughout his career, more left tackle than right tackle, but played a right tackle last year. He had a really difficult 2023. Jeremy Pike has an article on kind of 5 things to know about Calvin Anderson, and his year began on NFI, the non-football injury list, due to what we later found out to be malaria that he contracted while doing charity work in Nigeria. And apparently he got really sick, had like 104 point something fever. Doctor said he almost died. Fortunately recovered, came back, played, and then during practice last season got hit in the chest one play and had a heart contusion, and then went on injured reserve, and his season ended then. He was with the team, returned to camp this summer. I think did get hurt in late August, was placed on IR and then released, and now signing with Pittsburgh. A little undersized, kind of profiles more of a guard size than the tackle size, but he has played tackle throughout his career and will be that right tackle depth behind Broderick Jones.
Let's see, that gives them now 9 offensive linemen back, 9 offensive linemen on the 53, I believe. And we'll talk a little bit about Sayamalo and whether or not he may or may not play, but there's a good chance if Sayamalo's not ready to return this week, we could see Calvin Anderson go straight into dressing on Sunday against the Colts there. Highsmith, with him being sidelined now, going to be interesting to see what the byproduct of that is. Obviously, do you have your charting pulled up from the other day and Leal, DeMarvin Leal, and the snaps that he played at outside linebacker?
Sure, just from the Chargers game you're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he did. He did a little. I don't know how much he did after Highsmith went down. I imagine there was some, because just to get some depth in there, and he should be kind of next man up as that depth guy. Let me just give me 1 second here as I pull up the charting. I'm just kind of going through it here. Fly by night. Looks like I got 8 snaps overall, and yeah, I got 8 snaps. How much? Trying to see when they came maybe after Highsmith. Only got 2 snaps after halftime, so it really was. I mean, again, the Chargers only ran 15 plays after halftime, so there really wasn't a need to rotate. But yeah, it's safe to assume that Leal will get increase in snaps.
Got through that a little quicker this week, did you?
Yes, I was a happy man.
Okay, so moving on into this week, obviously would expect Watt on the left and Nick Herbig on the right. I would imagine some DeMarvin Leal sprinkled in within that, and when TJ Watt comes off the field, it probably mostly would be worked around TJ Watt to however many snaps you get him off the field. And I would guess, even though, I mean, Leal can play, technically can play both sides, so it'll be interesting to see who goes to what side when and if TJ Watt's off the field. But I would imagine those would be your top 3 rotation. I guess the only question is will they elevate an outside linebacker off the practice squad on Saturday? And if so, who would that person potentially be?
Yeah, the names are pretty thin. They typically have at least 4 outside linebacker capable guys. Is the international player that they have, is that the outside linebacker? I have to look it up here. I meant to do that earlier, but I can't remember.
Yes, Adi, is it him, or is it the
Yeah, that's what I have to double check. I don't want to get confused here on which is which. I have to double check which one is the international player.
Yeah, I forget there.
I think the outside linebacker is not the international guy, because I'm pretty sure he was with Green Bay last year, and he's not. I think he was born in America, and I think he's been in the league for a couple of years. So I think he actually is not the international exemption.
Okay, and then Marcus Haynes has been around this team off and on a little bit as well too.
Right.
So he's back, obviously back on the practice squad. So like you said, and it's not guaranteed to happen, right? I mean, you would think that it would, though, with just 3.
Yeah, you're pretty thin. I mean, you could get through, but God forbid you get somebody hurt. Remember that happened last year against the Patriots. They sat Marcus Golden down for that game. Only had 3 guys, and was it Watt? I think got poked in the eye or something. They had to finish the game with 2, which puts you in a pretty tough spot there. So we'll see. Could you bring back Kyron Johnson? He's on the practice squad right now. You'd have to poach him. I don't know if you want to use roster spot for that. But there is going to be a question about depth. Obviously, you're content with Herbig and Watt. You're good there. Not a big drop off, but there's a domino effect.
All right, something to look out for as we get closer to Saturday. We'll probably talk a little bit more about it on Friday then.
Right, right. What else do we have here? Anything else from the housekeeping side of things? Tomlin, during his Tuesday press conference, talking about injuries, says essentially confirming 3 players will be out, one of them being Trice, who we now know will be out because he's on IR, but says Alex Highsmith will unlikely to play in this one. Also, Michael Pruitt probably sit out this week, Tomlin says, with his knee injury sustained against Denver. Tomlin not ruling out Jalen Warren or Isaac Seumalo, did say that Warren likely to be limited start of the week. With his injury, Tomlin said he was limping, saw him kind of not moving around too well at the end of the game. So we'll get kind of official word on that here today. Light on for Seumalo, who has yet to practice and straining his pec before the season began. Tomlin says if Seumalo cannot play or whatever time he does not work, they'll continue to rotate between Mason McCormick and Spencer Anderson at left guard, and status quo on Russell Wilson. Tomlin did say that he expects Wilson to be limited, not full, during Wednesday's practice, and they'll go from there.
This inactive list already seems like it's filling up a little bit, even on a Wednesday. Obviously, we'll watch what happens with Seumalo here for the rest of the week, but I've got tentatively in my notes Isaac Seumalo, Alex Highsmith, Michael Pruitt. I'm guessing we'll talk more about it here in a minute about Russell Wilson. Sounds like Russell Wilson headed for another week of inactive emergency third quarterback, so that's 4 already. Probably a decent chance Terrell Edmonds is down again, right? So that's 5. Are they going to, with if they have to use Leal as an outside linebacker, maybe Dean Lowry gets a helmet again. So, I mean, we already tentatively got 5 inactives, and then barring somebody getting elevated, like an outside linebacker from the practice squad, you would need a 6th at that point. Is Roman, here's where I'm going with this, is Roman Wilson going to get squeezed out again, potentially as inactive here?
We'll have to see. Tomlin was asked about what Wilson has to do, and Tomlin's answer was pretty simple and expected. Just keep working, and talked about all the time that he's missed. We'll have a clearer picture by Friday's injury report about who's going to play and who's going to sit. I just off the top, and I guessed this last week and I was wrong, but I think he'll probably dress this week. I don't think they want to do what they did last week where they lose a receiver and things kind of get messy from there. I think there'll probably be enough injuries to open the door for Wilson to dress.
And then one other one that we're watching, I guess, would be Jalen Warren to see because I think the report on him is he's kind of week to week right now. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to see. Obviously, if Jalen Warren can't go, he would be inactive, and that would open up a spot. But it would give you just, I guess, 2 tech. You would have Najee's supposed to be fine, even though that arm was in a sling, elbow in a sling. He hasn't missed an NFL game yet. He's going to play. Mike Tomlin said he should be ready to rock and roll. And then obviously Cordell Patterson in the backfield. And I suppose you could use Connor Hayward in an emergency situation in the backfield. I mean, you got a running quarterback in Justin Fields on top of it. Like to see a little bit more of those design runs. We'll talk about that here in a little bit moving forward. But okay, I think that shakes out kind of the health of the team. And as you said, by Friday, at least we'll have 2 participation reports in, and we'll get a clearer view there. And then obviously by Saturday, 4:00, we'll see what the elevations and all look like, if any.
I know you just tweeted this either last night or this morning. How many players for Pittsburgh are on injured reserve right now? I think they're close to getting a free haircut. I think it's like 9 players on IR, 10th one, you get a haircut for free or something.
Yeah, I think we get a taco or something like that, don't we? Yeah. But let's see. You got Jeremiah Moon and Dylan Cook. Both were designated to return before as part of the 53-man roster cut initially. So they're on there. Both of those guys are eligible to return beginning in week 5. They could can't they technically open the window on those guys yet?
No, I think it's got to be at least the first. I think they could open it starting like next Monday or Wednesday.
Okay. All right. So
sure.
there's something to watch there.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Dave, you called this one. Pittsburgh signing C.J. Henderson to the practice squad, announced today to fill up the roster spot. So from your lips to the Steelers Twitter account.
All right. There it is there. That looked like that was going to possibly happen. So now it has. Okay, good.
But yeah, we should mention, that, in terms of reinforcements at tackle and outside linebacker, since, lines are looking a little thin there right now with Moon being able to return starting next week. Same with Cook. We have no idea if they will be designated to return. We don't know the state of their health and the exact nature of their injuries, but that should be notable given that Fautanu is out for the season and that Highsmith could miss more than one game. So that is at least maybe some potential reinforcements coming for as early potentially as the Cowboys game in week number 5.
Okay.
All right. Who are the other names on IR? I know we're kind of you're tweeting and we're talking about this Henderson signing, but it's Cook and Moon. It's Trice, obviously. It's Logan Lee. It's Fautanu. It's a long list of names there.
Let me go back to my list here real quick. Okay, Logan Lee went on and is eligible to return week 5. Tyler Matakevich is on and eligible to return week 7. Ben Skoranek on there, eligible to return week 7. Troy Fautanu on there, eligible to return week 7, but it sounds like he's going to miss at least the rest of the regular season. Corey Trice Jr. on there as of this week, eligible to return week 8. And then 4 guys that are out for the season: Cameron Johnston, Nate Herbig, Ryan Watts, and then David Perales, who went on there earlier in the summer there. So it's building. It's building. You'd like it to slow down here a little bit, obviously, here over the next couple of weeks.
We should just to mention a little more on Henderson there. Yeah, former top 10 pick, the Jaguars, and it didn't work out. His career flamed out pretty quickly. He bounced around, was in Houston this summer. I think he's had some injury issues as well. Talented guy out of Florida, fast pedigree guy that Pittsburgh is always seemingly attracted to, but it's been a tough career for C.J. Henderson.
Yeah, they'll see now how quickly they can get him up to speed with this thing, but they definitely needed some depth there with these injuries. They needed a guy with some experience as well too, and as we stated, they worked him out and another cornerback out last week, and I think the other corner ended up signing to, was it the Rams practice squad? I forget, but anyway, that made a lot of sense to go that route.
All right, let's talk Tomlin Tuesday. Injuries aside, and the same posture is happening here at quarterback. Really no update in the language that Mike Tomlin used, where Wilson's continuing to work back to health. No decision has been made because, in Tomlin's words, there's no need to make a decision because Wilson is not healthy. Justin Fields will continue to prepare as if he's going to be the starter. He, of course, all expectations are he will start against the Colts, and really it is status quo in Tomlin's mind at quarterback.
Yeah, and Tomlin, and he's going to get these questions every week, right now, and has for quite a while. But at some point, he's going to have to address this elephant in the room. You would think, right? And was it you that wrote about this this morning about the whole Fields Russell Wilson situation? Or was that
I don't think so. Probably was Matthew. Yeah, I didn't write about the situation there now.
But look, he keeps pointing to when Russell Wilson is healthy, fully healthy, what that will look like, and in so many words, he said you'll know it when you'll see it, type of thing. But he continues to just buy himself some time here by pointing to the Russell Wilson health aspect as far as not naming a QB1. Now, the weekly depth chart, obviously read into that what you will. We pull them every week because that's what we do when the game releases is released right ahead of the Mike Tomlin press conference. Russell Wilson is still QB1 on the depth chart. Once again, do with that information as you would like to, but at least for this week, signs are pointing to Russell Wilson being the emergency 3 quarterback, I suppose. And Mike Tomlin said that at the very least, Russell Wilson will not go full on Wednesday. And I guess they'll take it from there. But if Russell Wilson gets himself into a position where he's healthy enough to be the backup, that's when the fun starts, right?
Yeah, at some point, Tomlin won't be able to go into week 11 and say, yeah, Wilson's just not quite there yet. Eventually, there'll be a time where the team will have to admit and acknowledge that he is fully healthy, but that time is not going to be right now. So Tomlin's going to string that out as long as he possibly can, so he doesn't have to commit. So hypothetically, if Fields were to be a disaster and just show major aggression, you can make that switch without ever actually declaring anything and just say, yeah, we're going back to Wilson. He's healthy now, kind of thing. But again, the expectation is that Fields is going to start. And really, I think at this point, Dave, even though Tomlin is not using this language, I think Fields should get some grace and kind of some slack, where it's not looking over your shoulder saying, I make one mistake and I'm going to be replaced by Russell Wilson. I think even if you have one less than stellar game, some regression in this play against the Colts or the Cowboys coming up here next couple of games, where it's not going to be at the first sign of trouble, we're going to yank him. I think he's shown enough overall to have some margin in his play.
I do the weekly spot with Dave Weekly on his radio show there in West Virginia, and he asked a similar question to me yesterday, like that. What happens? Basically, how much grace has Justin Fields earned at this point? And he went on to speculate, what if this game against the Colts doesn't go well? And my gut feeling is on first, what you have to better define what doesn't go well. I think the tape obviously would speak loudly on that, but within all that, still I'm of the mindset now. I do think that he's earned enough grace that barring just it being atrocious against the Colts, and then let's say after that, Russell Wilson is in Mike Tomlin's eyes 100% healed. But I even think Mike Tomlin would dance around that a little bit. Long story short, I think Justin Fields has earned himself. Okay, that wasn't a great showing there. Go back out there and rebound this next week here. So, I think you framed it right. At some point, he can't go into the game wondering, man, if I mess this one up, I'm out of here, and for however many weeks. And we said the other day, or at least I did, I view him as a starting quarterback until he's not, and I know that's loosely defined, but to me, it would take a lot for him not to start. I mean, and I think everything within context here of. I think you really have to look at these first three games of what he's been asked to do, or what looks like he's being asked to do, how he's accomplishing that, and then the exterior play that's going along with that. And yeah, he threw the interception the other day against the Chargers, but that wasn't egregious, man. When you look at some of the other quarterback play going around the league, and once again, I said at the top of the show, I've already dove into some Indianapolis Colts tape and their last two games on the offensive side of football to look at Richardson and all like that. And then you look at some of these other quarterback performances around the league. Man, Richardson in these last two games, just it's hard to get excited about him right now. Now, I have not looked at that first game against the Texans. I will before we talk on Friday, and supposedly that's, I guess, his best game of the three so far. But man, some of the throws that kid's made in these last two games, just lollipopping around like no cares in a row, almost like playing out in the backyard with the fellas, Mm-hmm. Long story short, I'd much rather have Justin Fields out there than I would Anthony Richardson right now. And I think Fields has represented himself well with what he's been asked to do. And just circling this back, I think at the very least he's earned a grace one game, performance here, heading into this game against the Colts.
Agreed. And that's where the conversation, I think, should shift. Less so of will Fields start, but how long will Fields remain the starter for? And that question becomes, because listen, a bad game is going to happen at some point. Any quarterback over a 17-game season is going to have a stinker. And I'm not saying it's going to be this week. It's just inevitably going to come. It's just how a season goes for essentially every player, especially the quarterback position, who handles the football on every single play. So, yeah, I think I'm of the mindset. I think the team will be of the mindset that, Fields is not going to be benched at the first sign of trouble.
Look, heading into the preseason, and once Russell Wilson hit the field in that preseason game for the first time, I was looking forward to seeing Russell Wilson lead this team, in week one. But now here we are 3 games into the season, have got obviously a out of preseason look at the offense and what they're trying to accomplish, and then mixing that together with Justin Fields. And Mike Tomlin is more than willing to have rock fights every week, right? He is more than willing to have his quarterback, just not make the huge mistakes. Now, this isn't a Duck Hodges situation from a few years ago where they barely let him do anything. You obviously have the ability. We've seen Justin Fields check a lot of boxes in the regular season with what he can do within the Arthur Smith offense here. We've seen him make plays out of structure. We've seen him use his legs. We've seen him be able to throw the football down the field. We've seen him make some tight window throws. We've seen him progressively, depending on what he's facing, use the middle of the field a little bit more. And Mike Tomlin made sure to say, hey, don't get caught up in all like that, because week one, it was Bates, it was Simmons. Week two, more of the same, but kind of using more outside. And then you face a team this past week in the Chargers that has had more of a tendency to have the middle of the field open. And then that's why you saw that happen. Have we seen any of those 40 or 50-yard scampers yet? No, but I'm not concerned about it because I know he can do it, and I know those things are coming. And I also know, one of those 40 or 50-yard shots down the field, he has the ability to do that as well too. So even though I went into this thing excited to think about, okay, Russell Wilson out of the chute in week one, interested to see what that looks like. I'm not above thinking, okay, well, this team can win games with Justin Fields, and what we've seen through 3 weeks to me is just kind of a scratch of the surface, so to speak. And I think that there's a little bit more meat on the bone with him, and especially if he doesn't turn the football over.
Mm-hmm. Sure, there's certainly more, and we've seen this team open up the offense week by week. There's been more on his plate and more to do, and just it's been more open week one versus week two versus week three. And we've kind of talked about it, but just to really address it, Fields is not making the mistakes he made in Chicago. He's taking care of the football. He's a lot more accurate. I know completion percentages is just one data point that kind of lacks context, but he's completing 73% of his passes this year. He's never completed more than 61.5% his previous 3 years. I mean, he's been accurate. He's hitting with the routine throws much more consistently. He's hanging in the pocket more. We talk about that 27-yard completion to Pickens at the end of the half. I think you referenced it, and Josh Carney had a clip of it on Twitter. Last year he would have bailed. He would have taken off there. He wanted to run, but he was able to reset himself, keep his eyes downfield, hit Pickens for a big gain that helped get them into, at least semi-field goal range. It would have been even closer had Frymouth caught that pass right before Chris Boswell's 62-yard field goal attempt. His snap-to-throw time has come down. He's been consistently above 3 seconds the last 2 seasons. He's at 2.82 seconds right now. Still a little bit on the longer side, but an improvement for him. So, I know he's benefiting from an elite defense and playing from ahead, all things that all quarterbacks would benefit from, but just in a vacuum, he is playing well, and he is not the same guy in Chicago in the sense of he is not making the mistakes that doomed his Bears career.
And look, there's been a couple of drops within this, so his completion percentage could actually be a little bit higher. Looking at some of the next gen stat stuff through week 3, 73.3% completion percentage. His expected completion percentage is actually lower at 66.8. So for him to have a plus of 6.6 above expected completion percentage ranks him 4th in the league right now, behind Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels, and Justin Fields. And Jaden Daniels is at 7.4 of his expected completion percentage. How much of that was on that one throw to Scary Terry late in that game? Against the Bengals on Monday night there. So, and let's see, what is his tight window? I'm not seeing his tight, but I know his tight window throws is looking pretty good right now. Look, you can get into his intended air yards number being relatively low at 5.9. You can look at his completed air yards at 4.7, and that raise your eyebrows a little bit, but it's all within that needs context into what he's being asked to do on top of it. He hasn't taken a lot of shots down the field, and then, you hate to sit here and cherry pick it, but what if what if George Pickens doesn't get called for that pass interference in week 1? What if that holding call against that, kind of ticky-tack holding call on Broderick Jones in that second game doesn't happen? We're looking at totally different numbers. Now, once again, it's dangerous to go week by week and say, but 3 weeks into the season. And look, I think we got an email about this that we'll address later on in the show, talking about adjusted net yards per passing attempt. And look, I love that stat more than anybody else, probably. Most people related to talking about the Steelers. But here's the thing about that. It is only a 3-game sample. I don't get deeper into relying on that stat as a predictive measure until you've got 6 or 7 games up underneath your belt, because one very good or one very bad game can throw that off. But I will say this about Justin Fields and his adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat is it's been very even through the first 3 games. So there is that aspect of it. And then once again, when you roll back to the tape and you see what he's been asked to do, that has to be taken into account with that stat.
Yeah, I mean, he's been consistent, and that's the thing he lacked in Chicago. He was a very up-down player. He'd have some great games and individual throws and a great highlight reel, but there were a lot of negativity associated with that as well. And part of that, I think Broderick Jones even spoke to it, where he's got people to lean on in Pittsburgh, and that's a good thing. He can lean on the strength of the defense and the focus on the run game and not having to do everything. And there's a probably comfort and weight off your shoulders in some sense for that. But he's shown whenever he needs to make the big play, he can make the big play. And some of those have been called back, like you said. But he's not – the highlight part of Justin Fields is still very much in his wheelhouse. He can still make those plays. He just doesn't have to make those plays as often as he did in Chicago. And you give a guy structure and scheme and identity for him, for an offense, guys will grow.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a little bit more meat left on that bone with him. So it'll be interesting to see this next start, to see how they build on what they put out there these last 3 games. What did you think about Mike Tomlin talking about what he's liked, what he's learned about Justin Fields so far through these first 3 weeks?
It was a lot of things that you had talked about on Monday's show about him being a very even keel, calm, in the midst of craziness kind of a guy, where he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. And again, I refer to that as his slow heartbeat, where just nothing seems to rattle or phase or get this guy off balance. And that's a level of calm and confidence and comfort that I think is really important for still a pretty young offense. And Fields himself, of course, is pretty young as well.
All right, we're not big fans of hypotheticals and all like that, especially when people ask about what is Dan Moore Jr.'s contract situation going to look like after the season, those kind of things. But this just crossed my mind. Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan are behind closed doors after these first 3 games, and they're thinking about the quarterback position. In their heart of hearts right now, and assuming that Russell Wilson will be healthy week 5, week 6, and check all the boxes when it comes to that. In their heart of hearts right now, they have to be thinking, man, we really want this Justin Fields thing to work out here, right?
Sure. I mean, ideally, before the season even began, if you asked who would you rather have as the long-term quarterback coming out of this season, it would be Fields, just because he's younger, obviously. Wilson is 35, however old he is, and Fields is a decade younger. And so he'd be a more sustainable long-term option than Wilson. And you just want Fields to work because you have a long-term quarterback to go to. I didn't care if it was Wilson or Fields. I just want to have a guy that I feel like I can start next year and re-sign and have some confidence in to stop playing this rotating quarterback game for, different week 1 quarterbacks in 4 straight years. But yeah, I mean, of course they would love Fields to be the guy.
Now look, would we like to see more points? Yes. How close is the dam to breaking within that? What is the ceiling when it comes to Fields in this offense? I think we're going to learn a little bit more about that these next couple of games, assuming that he is a starter past the Colts game here. But long story short, I think the organization is happy where Fields is at in this thing. I think they can build off of what's out there. And once again, I think in their heart of hearts, they would like to see this the Field situation continue on.
And this offense is progressing, even from a just literal touchdown standpoint. 0 touchdowns in week 1, 1 touchdown in week 2, 2 touchdowns in week 3. Just from like the bare bones numbers of it, you see progression there. But you see on tape, you see progression as well. Clean up the penalties last week overall. Still some work to do, but that has improved. I don't want to harp on it because I've mentioned it a couple times. It's going to probably be a conversation to be had about it a couple of weeks, if and assuming when Tomlin says that Fields is officially the guy, that Wilson is healthy, he'll be the backup. But you just wonder where Russell Wilson's mind is at right now, because he knows the situation. He's a veteran. He's not dumb. He knows that he's basically close to healthy and put play if needed to. If Fields was terrible or if he got hurt, that cap would start feeling a whole lot better in Mike Tomlin's mind right now. And he knows that Fields is playing well and unlikely to give that spot up anytime soon. So what does Wilson decide to do? What's his thinking? We don't know, obviously. He's going to say all the positive things with the media. But you wonder where his head is at right now.
Yeah. Are you guessing that we'll hear from both Fields and Wilson in what day is that? Thursday? They
speak on Thursdays. Yeah, I would expect to hear from both again, yes.
At some point, though, you got to put one of them in a box, right?
Well, yeah, so once you declare it, I mean, the interview, at least what was shown publicly on Steelers.com last week with Wilson, was very short, because at this point, there's really no questions left to ask him. It's just, how's your cap? Yeah, I'm working back to it, and that's really all there is to say at this point. So, but I imagine both will continue to speak.
And then we'll continue to get questions, I'm sure, and there'll be speculation about I know Adam Schefter was on Pat McAfee and saying, the Miami Dolphins would make sense for Russell Wilson, and that any type of speculation is these days taken as reporting, as that's going to happen. But I stand firm in my stance that I said the other day. If Russell Wilson is not clamoring and saying, look, you guys got it here. Can you do, and yes, I understand the whole no trade clause and all like that. But I mean, obviously Wilson could waive that in the right situation and all. You do have to wonder, the closer that you get to the trade deadline, if indeed Justin Fields continues on and the team's happy with him as a starter, you do have to wonder if Russell Wilson might go have those conversations with the Steelers.
It's possible. Just to play it out briefly from Wilson's standpoint, let's assume he's the backup. That becomes official next couple of weeks, and that Field stays healthy essentially the rest of the way and finishes out the year. Where does that leave Wilson for 2025? He'll be a free agent. He'll be another year older. He'll have not played, or either literally or only a couple of snaps if there's some mop-up duty, whatever the case is, throughout 2024. He'll be coming off of 2 years in Denver that were rough overall. He knows that if he's in that, if that's his resume, that there might not be a huge market for him, especially to start. And I think he understands he would like to have some good tape this year, because his whole point of signing with Pittsburgh was to kind of 1 year, I don't want to say a prove-it deal. The contractual situation of Denver being on the hook for the contract, made the situation different than others, but this was kind of a chance to rebuild his value, prove to the NFL he was a starting quarterback, and secure that big money deal in the offseason. And that's not going to happen, obviously, if he's on the bench. So I could understand the incentive for him to potentially, I'm just speculating, but for him to want to go play somewhere.
And I'm not giving him away for a bag of footballs either, especially with that contract of his and the experience that he has. And one snap away, Lord knows, how injuries go on a week-to-week basis around the NFL. So a team, any team that may or might potentially be interested in trading for him, once again, I'd like to get a second or a third for him for sure.
Yeah, again, I'm not saying they should trade him. I don't want to trade him. I mean, I'm
not advocating doing
right.
it. I'm just saying if it got to that,
Right. And if someone does offer that, it is hard to turn down. But again, there's a conversation to be had about that longer, maybe closer to the deadline when there's some more clarity on what's happening in Pittsburgh. But I'd be really nervous to make that move, just because, like you said, if Fields one snap away, he goes down. Now Kyle Allen has to lead this team, and you're in a much different place. So I know Tomlin's all about volunteers, not hostages. I might be willing to take a hostage here, to be honest with you, which I'm sure will be someone will clip this out of context at some point, so I can no longer run for political office, I'm sure. But anyway, I would prefer to have Wilson be my backup.
All right, what else did Mike Tomlin? Anything else to add about the quarterback situation?
No, I think it sums it up pretty well. Yeah, nothing else crazy from Tomlin. I did love his little quip about when asked about the run defense of Dante Jackson and Joey Porter Jr., which was very strong against the Chargers. Says he'll continue to challenge those guys because one is young and one is little. So just straight roasting guys at his presser.
I took that as by design. I took that as Mike Tomlin. That wasn't for the media or for us sitting in mom's basement. That was just to keep a fire lit up underneath these guys. Mm-hmm. And look, they're going to play an offense this week that uses a lot of 11 personnel. They're an offense that will run out of 11 personnel. They've got to find back. Their offense is Jonathan Taylor in that offensive line. Right now, mixed in with Richardson saying somebody's down there somewhere. That's their offense. They're creative with the orbit motion. Long story short, these corners, whether they be outside or in the slot, are going to have plenty of opportunities, at least in this week 4 game, to make some plays. And Mike Tomlin, that was a message to those guys that, hey, don't go smelling yourself 3 games into this season here. So that's the way I took that. But boy, that was quite a shot at Beanie, wasn't it?
At Beanie or at Dante Jackson?
Well, I
was it about Big Beanie?
Well, one of them's kind of small. I mean, I kind of took it as Beanie too.
Okay, maybe I missed. I didn't remember if I heard the question the whole way through. I thought I was talking about Dante Jackson and Porter, but maybe I misinterpreted that.
I mean, is Dante really all that small?
Yeah, he's like 5'9". I mean, I forget what the question was. I don't know if the transcript is out there, but I just thought it was about Dante.
Okay, maybe
I can apply to a Beanie too.
Maybe I'm kind of interpreting it wrong, a little wrong too. I kind of envision it maybe more as a Beanie shot in there, but I don't know. I mean, regardless, he's making sure these corners know that they shouldn't be smelling themselves at this point.
Yeah, and that's true for the entire run defense. As good as they're playing, as great of a job as they did against the Chargers, to get another tough task against the Colts. Because Jonathan Taylor, who they did not see last year, is a tremendous talent, and the Colts are running the ball well. And Colts ran all over Pittsburgh last year. Granted, with all the injuries Pittsburgh had, much different looking Steelers defense this year. But the Colts did not have Richardson to defend in the quarterback run game. They did not face Taylor last year, so the Colts are saying we got some reinforcements as well.
All right. I mean, Dante, looking at his combine stuff, 5'10 and a half, 178.
Yeah, I just forget. I thought the question was asked about Dante, but maybe I don't know if I misheard that, or I don't know if the transcript is out there that is referring to who he was talking, because he was talking about two guys. He said one is young, one is little. I thought it was Porter and Jackson.
Okay, you might be right.
All right. Anything else from Tomlin? He did confirm, again, that rotation at left guard. So if Samalu can't play, I think it's been kind of an assumption that Samalu will play against the Colts, and maybe he will, but he's yet to practice yet. So today will be an interesting day. Will he get some limited work in? Maybe will he sit out entirely? He's practicing full. That's going to obviously start to suggest he's likely to play this weekend, but I don't want to assume that he will. And I still don't love that left guard rotation there, which they were even doing mid-drive. There was a one point in the second half where McCormick, I think, started at left guard, and then he kicked out to be a tackle eligible, and Anderson came in. So, I mean, they're really rotating this thing pretty intensely.
Yeah, and it feels like that we could be headed for that again this week based on what Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday.
And how do you feel about that? Because we both loathe the tackle rotation, which went belly up for a bunch of reasons. What do you think about left guard situation?
I mean, I don't love it, but I mean, I understand why they do it. I thought Mason McCormick represented himself pretty well in there, and now you got the tackle situation that you have, and you have to kind of you kind of wonder this week how much work Spencer Anderson will get at tackle, right? Just in a case of an emergency situation. And how much does that take away from the guard work? Or maybe that's why they're doing it, to make sure they have both guys ready. I mean, I understand the core of it. I just, I just haven't been a fan of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy about it either. Tomlin did say that was planned in terms of Anderson and McCormick rotating, even though McCormick didn't get his first snaps at left guard until late in the first half. I don't know if that was because Pittsburgh, they weren't really in rhythm early and they were going 3 and out, and they wanted to give Anderson some more snaps before making that switch. So we'll see. But ideally, of course, Malu comes back, is healthy, and that'll kind of create some good depth and obviously get your best lineman back in the lineup.
All right, I found the quote from the transcript here on Tomlin. He says, your defensive line has been winning, especially a lot this past Sunday, but how much have your cornerbacks played a role in keeping the run game and forcing guys back to the inside? Okay, he says they've done the job, but it's week to week at corner. I'm going to keep challenging those two. One's young and the other one is little. I like challenging them, but make no mistake, they're riding the wave that the front has provided, but we've invested a lot in resources and time into that group, so we're not surprised by their effectiveness. So, okay, I suppose, especially when he says back inside, and yeah, you're right, probably more Dante Jackson than Beanie, even though you could probably apply it to Beanie.
Sure. Yeah. Who's both young and little, so he fits both qualifications.
But here's the thing overall, when it comes to the cornerback group as a whole, whoever's on the field, and you're going to see a lot of sub-package type situations here this week out of this defense. They better be ready to continue to come up and be physical and help run support.
Yeah, you said it well. You can't get feeling too good about your performance against the Chargers. It was great. I thought the secondary, the whole team tackled really well. It was as fundamental of a game as you're going to see. But the NFL is a great way to humble those who get a little too high on themselves. So the Colts are going to be a challenge as well.
All right. What else did Mike Tomlin have to say that caught your eye?
I think that was really
Nick Herbig's not scared of anything. What what was the exact quote that he said? How can you not be impressed with Nick Herbig up until this point? Some positive things there. I think you hit on the Roman Wilson, that he just has to keep working. It's very difficult to get on a moving train. You've mentioned that several times here in these first 3 weeks. Tomlin goes on to say all you have to do is look at Dean Lowry, for example. There's a veteran guy that missed a substantial amount of training camp, and that was and it was the third game before he got a helmet, although he's been healthy for 3 weeks. So that gets multiplied when you're talking about a guy that has no NFL experience like Roman. So my advice to Roman is to keep working and take that opportunity when that door is left ajar and be ready when it is.
Yeah, just be patient. I know it's frustrating. I'm sure it is for him. And I would love to see the guy out there and making plays. But when you miss that much time, basically the entire summer, it's going to set you back. So, be patient. He'll be out there.
All right. Anything else from Mike Tomlin?
He said, he was confident Chris Boswell would make that 62-yarder, wasn't worried about the time and potential leaving a second on the clock for the Chargers, which is ultimately what happened. But yeah, I was wondering, just quietly to myself, when would they try Boswell 60+? Obviously, the end of half gave them an opportunity to do so. He had the leg. He just pushed it a little to the right. So I think we'll get another chance for maybe 60+ at some point here if the opportunity arises.
All right. Where to from here?
Let's talk all-22 from this game. We've kind of gone back through our tape study. I've been able to rip back through it. Let's start with the offense here, Dave. What are your updated thoughts now that you've gotten to go through a couple times the coaches' tape?
Well, I think this plays in a little bit about what Mike Tomlin had to say during the opening there, the fluidity of the offense. You would just like to have seen this offense have a little bit more teeth to it. Coming out in these first couple of series, there seemed to be a mental error or two within that. I think as a whole, going back through the tape, there were some things that could have been blocked up better, specifically in the running game. However, we talked about a couple of those tosses as well too. That first toss the one that Jaylen Warren had over to the left-hand side, going back and looking at that one almost popped. Man, that was one maybe block at the second level from being even longer than it was. They had it blocked up pretty good overall. I thought passing concepts for the most part, I thought looked really clean. I liked the decision making for the most part. There was one play I think early on in the game where he had the dump down to, where's my notes here, to Najee over on the left side there. If you go back and rewatch the tape, I think he could have taken a shot to Scotty Miller down the left side in that situation. But my overall, none of my thoughts really have changed overall on this offense from after watching it and us talking about it on Monday on the All-22. I just think that, as Mike Tomlin said, you needed more fluidity earlier in this game. I would have liked to seen the running game do a little bit more than it did. And my thoughts coming out of this game is I would like to see them do a little bit of better job of maybe executing design quarterback run stuff for Justin Fields.
Yeah, in terms of Fields, this is going to be nitpicking because he played well overall, but quarterbacks deserve to be nitpicked because that's the position they play. It's the weight they carry. A couple things I think he can work on. There was one where he, on a zone read, he handed the ball off to the running back, and he shouldn't have. And I think he knew it after the play. He should have been able to keep that one because the end was crashing down. There was a lane there. Had he, kept the ball himself. They ran Hoss-wide juke again with Pickens as the number 3, and this one was a little tougher read because Derwin was on him pre-snap, and then Derwin James came in on a blitz, and it put Pickens on a linebacker one-on-one, and Fields didn't see it. He threw to Patterson right side, got a decent gain out of it, but man, they had it in the preseason too. They got Pickens on a linebacker, and that's a matchup you could identify and take advantage of. That's a touchdown. Pickens went vertical, and he would have scored there easily. Can't see everything, but would want to identify the matchup there pre-snap potentially. I think Fields has to take a little off his fastball in those checkdowns. There was, I think, at least one, maybe two to Najee, where it's he's like 5 yards away from him. And I mean, he is like max power on the pass. and has to maybe, I mean, he caught it, but it was maybe take a little of the edge off on the throw, which I know was a very minor point, but kind of just layering that throw and not throwing a missile to your check down might be something to recommend. But again, those are all, pretty nitpicky type of things.
Great read on the, we talk about the touchdown to Calvin Austin. What about the other big play down the middle of the field where they caught him napping in the middle of the field there?
To Austin?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were both great throws over the middle. I thought that first throw to Austin was a really good yak ball that gave him great opportunity to run after the catch. And you mentioned about on the touchdown, it was kind of intentionally thrown behind to kind of fit it around the lurker to make sure that Austin could make that throw and then use his speed the other way. So, I thought that the middle of the field usage was really good in this one.
How much there? I forget. I've got it bookmarked here somewhere. One of the highly established analytic guys that I really like following, and there are a few of those, obviously. That today's NFL, especially with the quarterback play, is mostly relegated to a shorter, higher percentage throw game. With some of the top quarterbacks, I think he designed this tweet around kind of Josh Allen, how we're seeing Josh Allen be more of not so much of a long ball guy as much as you kind of a shorter rhythmic passing game that relies heavily on the yak. And now that you're in, I mean, we've even seen Patrick Mahomes. You go back and look at Patrick Mahomes' kind of core intended air yards and completed air yards, distances mixed in with yak along with that. Is that what today's game is for good quarterbacking? Is it complete? Is it more of a shorter passing game that's become even more reliant on yak than ever? And obviously we went into this game this past week, and one of the keys once again that I wrote about was, man, we've got to see the Steelers yak. I mean, they were last in the league or near last in all yards after the catch stats. And one of the things I thought we needed to see more of in this game against the Chargers was that yak. And boy, they had, 144 yards of yak. And then obviously a lot of that was Calvin Austin, but you had pretty good yak on that other Calvin Austin catch as well too. I guess that's where I'm going here. Is the Steelers offense specifically going to be more relegated on yak?
Yeah, I think it's just a response to the too high world the NFL is playing. It's pretty well documented. The NFL is running, too high looks, cover two man, those types of things more often. And so it's harder to throw vertically. Defenses were tired of giving up the big play. And so they're going to force things underneath and force some longer drives and for you to be efficient and accurate and avoid penalties and stay on schedule and all those types of things. So I think it's really just a response to how defenses are adjusting and offenses are adjusting back in that continual chess match. So yeah, looking at yak here, I think Pittsburgh is now just eyeballing it 26th, 27th or so after this game. So there was some progress made with all the yak they picked up against the Chargers.
What needs to be done to get the running game going sooner than later in the third or fourth quarter?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers were a tough team. They had, Pittsburgh was not prolific running the ball early against Atlanta or Denver, but they were better, and the Chargers are just a good front. And listen, teams know that Pittsburgh they want to run the football. If you're playing Pittsburgh, what is your mission number one as a defense? Stop the run, because they're running the ball as I think they're second in attempts right now. Green Bay passed them last week after their 53 rushing performance in that first Malik Willis start. So, I think in terms of getting the line healthy, in terms of being able just to probably be a little better communication wise, there were still some missed blocks and some missed assignments. There was one that Connor Hayward missed where I think him and Jones took the same guy. But I know that all defenses are trying to really sell out and stop the run. And so it's not going to be easy for Pittsburgh in most cases. We'll see about the Colts. The Colts, they played really well against the run against Chicago, but they don't have to force Buckner in this game. So I'm hoping for an easier time against the Colts. Maybe see some of that crunch play that Pittsburgh likes to use. Those quick hitting runs would be, I think, useful for this week against Indy.
All right. Any other overarching thoughts on the offense coming out of the All-22? I mean, I thought, for the most part, it was a pretty clean game by them, other than wanting the running game to have more success early on.
thought James Daniels had a really good game in pass protection from a play call standpoint. I didn't mind all the tosses. They were just trying to find something that worked. They ran the Zorro toss a ton. I mean, it wasn't obviously successful, but nothing really was successful until late in the game when you really wore those guys down. The Chargers were waving that white flag. The two play calls I really did not like from Arthur Smith. The one at the end of the half before the Boswell field goal, they ran that sprint out, which is fine, but there was no one in the flat. So I don't know what the plan was. It was like to hit Pickens downfield. It was like usually there's something they're quick in the flat to get you 5 yards, get out of bounds, get you in a more manageable field goal range. I don't know if somebody screwed something up or whatever the case was. And then that one toss that Daniels pulled around on to Najee where Fields pitched it to him. I have no idea what the intent of that play is. Like there's no one blocking anybody. It was a really ugly looking play. So those were two play calls I questioned about Arthur Smith, but I didn't mind the overall thought of him running a bunch of toss game.
All right. Impressed with Zack Frazier coming out of this one again.
Yeah, I mean, he's just the dude. How many pancakes this guy have in this game? He's just putting guys on the ground the whole time. He's running his feet. He's setting a tone. So it's all typical Zack Frazier stuff. We should note that on Ben's podcast, he had Marquise Pouncey on this week, and Pouncey was in town this weekend at the game for the home opener and said that Omar Khan asked Pouncey to go meet with Zack Frazier one-on-one. They had a good conversation, so that's pretty cool, and Pouncey is fully endorsing Zack Frazier.
And look, Zack should get better and better by the week. He definitely seemed really, really comfortable in that third game there. So looking forward to seeing how he can go up against this Colts front this week.
All right, Dave, defensively, what were your thoughts on the All-22 of this game?
Man, that's a hell of a unit over there. I don't have any really new overarching thoughts on this other than, the touchdown. Could Joey Porter maybe done, got his hands on the receiver a little bit, at least to slow him down, to give maybe Minka a chance on that. But other than that, and Mike Tomlin pointed out that we didn't even catch, or at least I didn't catch going through the defensive All-22, the longest run that the Colts or the Chargers had in that game. Steelers only had 10 men on the field. So got to work on the obviously the communication and getting the right personnel on the field moving forward. But outside of the touchdown play and, a handful of runs that they had. And look, would it have been interesting to see Herbert, not have to leave the game in the way, especially specifically he's working with, who was it, McConkey, being able to have some of the intermediate, cross the field type stuff open to him. I suppose, but I think the outcome still would have probably been the same, especially if you would have went up on them in the fashion that you did and got this defense in a situation where they were able to pin their ears back later in the game. I mean, that's what the Steelers want to do with this defense. Try to shut down that run as much as possible early on. Get in situations later in the game where they can pretty much get out to the quarterback and play the run on the way to that. But a lot of good tackling. I thought overall, not a lot of missed tackles, I don't feel, in this game. You saw your corners come back and safeties come down and make tackles when they needed to. Overall, I just thought it was by design. And look, I don't want to get into comparisons of this defense by any stretch of the imagination just yet, especially when it comes to trying to compare this defense to the 2008 defense here. But this defense right now has a adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat against them of 3.7 through 3 games. And that obviously is fantastic. And once again, I want to make sure I put this out here. I'm not going to dare compare the 2024 unit to the 2008 unit just after 3 games. But just so you know, the 2008 unit, by the end of that regular season, had a 3.2 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. So basically, that's that. Give me touchdown to the Chargers away from that. So if this unit stays healthy, and that's a big if, obviously, because you lose a guy or two, or you lose TJ Watt, knock on wood, or something like that, that all changes. And yeah, it's a little, you hate to lose a guy but like Alex Highsmith for a couple of games here, but I think Herbig has really represented himself more than well to this point. It will be interesting to see him get on a field for a larger amount of snaps, specifically against a run game like the Colts and what they're going to try to do probably on that side of the field, Herbig's side specifically. But man, this we said this the other day, or at least I did. I thought that this was going to be a good front seven with this unit. Well, the back end has more than held up and represented himself in this thing so far. This defense is looked even better than what I thought it would be. And yeah, you can throw in Kirk Cousins and Rusty week 1 and a rookie quarterback in Nixon week 2 and Herbert banged up. Look, you can't control all that stuff. But they have definitely answered the bell in these first 3 games and then some. And it's going to be hard to put up some points on this unit if they stay healthy.
And just to put the numbers to the missed tackles, according to our Josh Carney, his weekly missed tackles report, Pittsburgh only missed 3 in this game, and 2 of them were missed sacks, one by Highsmith, one by Herbig at the end of the first half on that Hail Mary, Dante Jackson having the other. So overall, typically that missed sack number or missed tackle number comes in around 6-7 per game. It's probably about the average. So 3 is a really impressive number. I thought it was just a really fundamental day without the run defense, just true 11-man run defense in this one, team run defense, which was required when you're facing a rushing attack of the caliber the Chargers had produced the first 2 weeks. David, I've got a lot of questions really this week, last week. What are your thoughts on Patrick Queen 3 weeks in? What is he doing well? Where is he struggling? Overall, how has he looked as that big free agent signing?
Man, if he has 2 more interceptions under his belt, we're not even talking about it. One right, one shorter, one right in his hands the week prior, I think, against Denver, and then one went right through his hands the other day. But I mean, I think you're seeing in all 22 shots the athletic ability of his and how that. I mean, I think you even had a clip on that interception of him dropping. And look, he can run with guys as far as hook zones and get to the right spot and carrying defenders down the field. I have no issue with that. I think he's just got to be a little bit more trusting in those guys that are playing. Look, he was thoroughly impressed with what Cameron Hayward did on that. I mean, it just wasn't one play, but it stuck out specifically of what Cameron Hayward did on that one play. He's got to trust the defense, and there might have been a gap or two that maybe he would like to have over there. And obviously, there's been some missed tackle or two along over through the way so far. But he did lead this team in tackles in this game against the Chargers. I'm not worried about him. I think he's fitting right in along with this group. I think Landon Roberts played well, went out there. I think Peyton Wilson has played well. I'm gonna spill it a little bit early here, though. This when it comes to 5 keys for this upcoming game against the Colts. One of them is going to be, I think, something along the lines of be Queen for the day, because he is going to be out on that field a lot in against 11 personnel situations. And this, once again, is going to be a team that not only uses designed runs to the exterior, they pull the guards. In this is a good Colts offensive line. They'll use quick game either to the running backs or to the wide receivers in screens that are essentially long runs. They'll do long pulls with their offensive line. Patrick Queen's going to have to carry a lot of ground in this game. So this is probably going to, even though the Chargers were a good running team, they were a little bit more north-south, I kind of view, and than the Colts have shown to be so far. So this game against the Colts, I think, is going to be a huge litmus test for not only the defense as a whole, the defensive front seven, but maybe Patrick Queen specifically.
Yeah, it's a great point. Shane Steichen is known for the RPOs. That's what the Colts are all about. And so we're going to see a lot of that. And with that quarterback run element, I can even pull up the numbers right now. According to Pro Football Reference, the Colts have run 37 RPOs this year. That's third most in football. Only teams ahead. The Packers have run 72, which I assume is maybe a little Malik Willis influence there. And the Eagles have 49, where Steichen was at previously. So, yeah, going to see a ton of RPOs this year. Or this week from the Colts. Yeah, I think Queen has been okay. I think be better against the run, getting off of blocks. But I think he's been athletic. He's gotten great depth in zone. I think communication has been really strong for this defense overall. I think they've been on the same page. They've been healthy. There's continuity there, but still somebody new like Queen becoming the quarterback of this defense, wearing the green dot, being that central hub of communication. He's done a nice job. So, yeah, has it been amazing? No, but we're 3 weeks in. I think he's played fine. I'm not sounding alarm bells about Patrick Queen.
What did Mike Tomlin say about him? He said, we saw you needed a new player such as Patrick Queen, green dot guy. Is there an adjustment in terms of not so much assimilating it to the defense, but with the players around him? And what are you seeing? He says, no question, Pat Queen is our defensive quarterback. Man, he has just as much of my energy as Justin and Russ. It was a challenge in the offseason from a coach's perspective, getting quarterbacks solid on both sides of the ball, but the men that they are has made it a fun and rewarding process. They love football. They're articulate. They can speak it. They think fast on their feet. They're adaptable. They can adjust. I'm talking about the quarterbacks and Pat. It's been really fun. I'm excited about having him. I just think you just got to get more adjusted to, because even he put out on Instagram something about TJ Watt, right? That MF just built different or something, something like that. I mean, he is surrounded by good players on that front. And I think as he just gets more adjusted into what they're doing schematically and trusting the players around him, it should this is a guy that could very well end up in the Colts game with 16 tackles, right?
Yeah, I mean, he led the team in tackles against the Chargers, I think, right? So he could do it again against the Colts.
Am I worried about him through 3 games? No.
Same. I think he is having to, because I think he wore the green dot for a time in Baltimore, but then once Roquan Smith got traded, Smith assumed those duties, and so once you pick it back up in a new defense, so maybe you got a lot on your plate. It's not about just what's my assignment on this play? You got 87 other things to worry about, and all the shifts and motions and checks. I mean, that's all Queen's partially and really kind of spearheading the communication of that kind of stuff. So there's an adjustment period for that. But yeah, I think Queen has been fine and will be just fine.
All right. Anything else stuck out in defense or on the charting?
No, just a really clinic tape kind of game where Pittsburgh was really buttoned up, really solid overall. Besides that touchdown where I think Herbert just made a good play, you tip your cap to him on that one. And the 10 men, which I think Pittsburgh was trying to do their over front and they were missing a guy. But they ran some of the 4 down linemen, looks true 4 defense linemen on the field to combat some of the heaviness of the Chargers. Cam Hayward, fantastic.
What a game.
It's just literally one of the best games of his career, which I know is saying a lot because he's had a great career and for his current age. But, he just schooled Slater. How many times did Slater go down on the ground because Hayward was just shedding him against the run? It was just ridiculous. So, incredible game.
Yeah, I thought Benton said this the other day. I thought Benton did some nice things in this game. Trying to think who else.
You were about Loudermilk. Loudermilk played really good run defense.
I thought he did. You look at the PFF stuff, obviously, and it just goes to show. And sometimes you kind of wonder about their grading and all like that. But and look, what's his MO has been that his highlights have been against the run, I think, for the most part. But I thought he represented himself well this past week.
Yeah, I was PFF grades be damned. I thought he had a good game.
I did as well.
All right, Dave, we can kind of wrap things up here. Also, I just mentioned, I mentioned it, I think, on Monday, but James Pierre, great job as a gunner, good coverage units. I thought that was a really important part. I thought Pittsburgh won field position. I don't have that number quantified, but just the eye test of it, Pittsburgh was really backing the Chargers up, put them in some tough spots there. Waitman punted well. So Tomlin also shouting out Corliss Waitman and Rodney Williams and those guys for the job they did on special teams.
And we had highlighted the other day about the 3 punts that Waitman had and all. Man, you can't ask for anything more than what he gave in that game. That's for sure.
Yeah, no question. All right, Dave, just quickly here. I know it's only week 3, but since there is something to go off of in terms of more than a 1-game sample size, some playoff odds, if you're into ESPN analytics, and also some history about the Pittsburgh Steelers 3-0 start, but ESPN analytics saying that Pittsburgh has a 53% chance to win the division. They can about a 70-80% chance to make the playoffs. But I think the more interesting part is the study that you did that talks about the history of teams who begin 3-0 and their odds of making the postseason.
Is this where we get the legal disclaimer of past performance does not indicate future results and yada yada? Mm-hmm. I always enjoy it. I enjoy deep diving historical aspects and percentages and regularities and irregularities and almost as much as you like doing some of these stats of the weird that you find. And Lord knows you have come up with some good ones in the first 3 weeks. Mine is not as interesting as anything that you put out through 3 weeks here, but the Steelers are now 3-0 to start the regular season. That's the 8th time the team has accomplished such a feat since the 1970 merger. So based on history, what does this 3-0 start to the season potentially mean for the Steelers and their playoff chances? Let the record show that the previous 7 times that the Steelers team has started the season 3-0, each time they made the playoffs. Those seasons were 73, 78, 79, 1992, 2007, 2010, 2020. That's a 100% hit rate there. Now, dating back to 1970 merger, there has, according to StatHead, been 236 teams that started a regular season 3-0. Of those 236 teams, 178 of them ultimately made the playoffs. That's 75.4%. And I backed it down to even the last 20 NFL seasons. 93 teams have started. Now, I want to be clear, I did not include a strike, the 1981 strike season here. So
come on, Dave.
And I did not.
The Joey Cleanscales erasure will not be tolerated.
I did not even qualify or clarify that in my post either. So, and that's something that I normally, I usually add 500 unneeded words to a post at times because of trying to prevent a situation where someone in the comments says, oh, but you did not include.
Dude, I feel that I relate to that so much. Like my entire life is like written around like this carefully worded tweet or post of like trying to get out of ahead of a counter argument. It is scarred me for life.
It has me as well too. In today's instantaneous social media, blog commenting world, where in the old days you just put it into paper and left it and forgot about it, right? You can't do that nowadays because there's always 1 or 2 people that want to take issue with everything that you write. But I apologize. It did not include a strike or it did not set the dates for that. But anyway, in the last 20 NFL seasons, 93 teams have started a regular season 3-0, with 71 of them ultimately making the playoffs, and that equates to a 76.3% success rate. In case you're curious, Alex, and I know you were, the last time a team started a regular season 3-0 and failed to make the playoffs was in 2021, when both the Broncos and the Carolina Panthers accomplished that dubious feat. And I know you were wondering about this. The last AFC North team that failed to make the playoffs starting 3-0, and in fact, I think this is the only AFC North team in that time period of the AFC North to start a regular season 3-0 and not make the playoffs, was the 2016 Baltimore Ravens. Strangely enough, the Ravens were one of 4 teams that 2016 season that failed to make the playoffs after a 3-0 start. So basically, 3 out of every 4 teams that start a regular season 3-0 go on to make the playoffs. We could get into what it means for potential Super Bowl championships and yada yada, but all this is to say, at the start of it, before we got into this, I had the Steelers going 9-8 and not making the playoffs. I'm not looking too bright when it comes to that 3 games in. Now, look, they have a chance to go 4-0 on Sunday against the Colts. Only 4 previous times that the Steelers accomplished a 4-0 record to start the season, with the last time coming in 2020. Dating back to the 70 merger, there have been 143 teams that started a regular season 4-0, and 121 of them went on to make the playoffs, and that equates to an 84.6% chance. So 3-0 is a hell of a start. When it's better than being 0-3 like the Bengals, because I think if you throw out the if you don't include that strike season or the strike season, teams that start regular season 0-3, I think there's only been like 6 teams that have gone on to make the playoffs. So that's something to watch there. Just keep winning. 3-0 is a great start. If you go 4-0 against the Colts, and then obviously as stacked as this second half schedule is, and the way this team seems to be playing right now, things are looking up when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, to quote the famous philosopher Dory from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming. This team just has to keep swimming, keep winning, and build out an AFC North lead. They're 3-0. No one else is above 1-2. That's where the Browns, the Ravens sit, and the Bengals are 0-3 after that crazy loss in that fun game on Monday night against Washington, that coming out party for Jaden Daniels. So not assuming anything, there are no trophies, no T-shirts handed out for winning the AFC North through 3 weeks. And of course, have not played any divisional games. That won't happen until late this season. That will really determine a lot. But the more margin you can have going into that tough stretch, the better.
All right, shall we wind this down, get to some reader emails?
Yep, and close out today's show.
All right, Jonathan Glick writes in, for the first time in years, I actually believe in this Steelers team. However, I still think we are a wide receiver short, and Omar clearly does too, based on the Ayuk pursuit. If the Raiders are out of it, is Davante Adams a realistic trade target? Would we be able to absorb his contract? Short story is they should be able to absorb the contract. Let me see if I can get the specifics of that pulled up real quick. I know there was a thought from, who was it, from ESPN, Dan Graciano, something along the lines that he thinks that this team will be interested in pursuing a wide receiver the closer it gets to the deadline. Davante Adams is 32 years old. He is making $16.89 million. He's got some per game roster bonuses mixed in within there. By the time you get midway through the season here, his base salary charge would be obviously half of what it is now. This team's got the cap room to absorb something like that. He's under contract for 2025 and 2026, albeit very high base salary numbers on top of it. So even if you got into a situation, you could probably restructure what's left of $8-9 million and then worry about 2025, in the off season here. Short answer is if the Raiders were willing to part with Davante Adams, and assuming they weren't wanting the farm for him, is it plausible? And the short answer to that would be yes, it's plausible. You could go around the entire league right now, though, and look at some of the. In your heart of hearts, do you think he would be the guy?
No, ultimately, there's been so many rumors about him getting traded. It's always hard to just pick out one name and say, who is the guy, but not Adams. It's hard to identify that in the majority of cases. But it'll be a name that'll be kicked around because, listen, the Raiders seem to be going nowhere pretty fast. They're, 1-2 to start this season. They just got blown out by the Panthers. They got a bunch of defensive injuries. They're losing people left and right, Kuntz and Epps and, all those guys. So they're probably not going to be exactly in playoff position come week 9 if I had to venture a guess. And that's going to lend itself to some chatter about would they be willing to move someone like a Devontae Adams.
All right. I think along the line somewhere these last couple of weeks we've been asked about Adam Thielen. Now, Adam Thielen just went on IR, did he not?
He did with a hamstring injury, and I had no interest in Thielen really regardless, but this even makes it less likely.
Right. But, I mean, if you got in a situation, if he come, I mean, he's another older one, too. He's 34. God, is he that old already? But, yeah, you can absorb that. Look, if the Steelers keep winning and the closer it gets to the trade deadline, should they look for an additional wide receiver? Yes. Will anything ever come of that? Who knows? Stay tuned. But I imagine that won't be the last question we get when it comes to should they trade. Max writes in, this may be covered in today's pod, but I'll ask anyways. Patrick Queen, based on the eye test, other than that dropped INT, led the team in tackles and looked very vocal on the field. In my opinion, a big step over the last few years of mid-inside linebacker play. There's some concern from the Steelers' Twitter about his play against the run and shedding blocks. Is there reason to be concerned so far from your perspective over his play, or is this scheme adjustment? Top-tier podcast coverage as always this season. Appreciate everything you do, Max. Max, I think we hit a lot. I think you're right. We hit on a lot of that on Patrick Queen earlier in the show. Short answer is, I mean, is there things you'd like to see him clean up, and especially when he gets involved in trash and bigger bodies? Yes. Athletically, he looks fine. Fit in the defense, he looks fine. As far as schematics go, you just want to see a little bit better play overall. The way I'll answer this right now is that Sunday's game against Colts is going to be a big one to watch, I think, because he has a chance to really severely impact this game on defense.
Yeah, well said. I really have nothing else to add. Kind of had the conversation earlier. But yeah, I've been, again, not saying Queen's been amazing, but he's been fine.
Bryce wants to know, is it just me, or with Jaylen Warren clearly hobbled? Are you also wondering why they're not doing enough in the beginning of football games to give Cordell some more touches as a change of pace back? Seems like that would be a pretty prudent strategy moving forward if Jaylen isn't healthy. The way I'd answer that, let's watch Jaylen on the injury report this week. I will say that on that one that did not pop that I mentioned earlier in the show on that toss left there, it was a little lack of burst. How clear is it? Maybe on that play, I can't tell. It looked like Jaylen to me. Should they give Cordell more touches early in the game while Jaylen gets healthier? Look, they need to block it up better up front earlier in games.
Yeah, I mean, if Warren's out there and he's active, then he's going to get carries. There's only so many carries to go around with Harris and Patterson and Warren in week 1 when Warren was super limited. Patterson got work early. So we're only 3 games into this thing. Patterson's gotten his touches. He's gotten his involvement. He's had to play some receiver last week because, they lose Jefferson early. They only dressed 4, so kind of took some responsibilities elsewhere. I'm not really concerned about that. But it's been a unfortunate start for Warren. It sucks. I mean, he's a guy that I was hoping would have a bigger impact, and the injuries obviously affecting things. So hopefully he can get right because he's a really, really talented guy, and want to see him have success out there.
Chris Lookhart writes in, good morning, fellas. I don't really have much of a question. Just wanted to voice a worry. It seems with Trice and Highsmith going down, we are an injury in the secondary or edge away from possibly it all falling apart. Am I overthinking this, man? You go around the NFL, man. I know it's as a fan, it's easy to be hyper focused on the Steelers, and we covered the IR situation that this team has right now, and Would you be concerned if you lost, a guy like Joey Porter Jr. or T.J. Watt? Yeah, obviously, yes. But that's why you carry a 53-man roster, and that's why you evaluate the talent, and that's why you continually make phone calls in the Rolodex to get guys on the practice squad, because attrition is going to happen around the NFL, and the teams that are able to survive that better with the depth that they have, usually the ones that come out on top. So I don't think you could drive yourself mad going around saying, what if this guy goes down? What if this guy goes down?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but the team has been generally healthy, and hopefully Highsmith won't miss much time. Losing Trice sucks, but it's not like he was playing in an every down kind of role. We'll see how dime packages get affected. Probably get Elliott out there and have KZ and Minka be the three safeties in dime. So there'll be some shuffling there, but nothing too crazy. You have trust and competency and all those guys I mentioned. If you ever lose guys, multiple players at one position, as happened last year, it's going to be tough. That's tough for any team. But I think Pittsburgh has had some decent depth, and as long as your core is there, and your Watts and your Minkas and your Cams, as long as they're playing fundamentally sound, your Porters, etc., this defense should be in pretty good shape.
I think Darius Rush probably going to get back to getting the helmet this week, you would think, right?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Jeff Berg says, who's outside linebacker 3 now that Highsmith is out? Is Leal now the player who will come in to relieve Watt or Herbig to give them a break? He says, I haven't seen any roster moves, but maybe I missed an elevation from the practice squad. The practice squad elevations are normally the day, if it's a Sunday game, those happen on Saturday, Jeff. So we'll have to watch. Alex and I talked earlier in the show. We'll have to watch to see if they elevate one of these outside linebackers from the practice squad. But even if they do, it's going to be a lot of Watt, a lot of Herbig with some Leal mixed in, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's Okindiji is the guy on the practice squad that will likely be elevated if they do elevate someone. But to answer the question more directly, yeah, Leal will be top backup, and it'll be mostly those 3 guys.
All right, here's the one that I mentioned earlier in the show I wanted to get to from Robert Oberruder. Justin Fields in the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Been listening to the podcast for years, but this is my first time writing in. Well, all right, Robert, don't be a stranger. Thanks for the great analysis and the responsiveness to listeners and readers. My question is about Justin Fields retaining the starting job through the lens of the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. Listening to the podcast is how I first learned about the stat. Fields adjusted net yards for passing attempt stat for the first 3 games have been 5.32, 5.91, and 6.09 respectively. Man, that warms the cockles of my heart to see people track this. Given the high priority you both put on the stat, do you think it indicates Fields is the clear and obvious choice to be the starter going forward, to borrow Alex's phrasing? I like that it has been on an upward trend, like the offense overall, but it seems like it's still lagging, where you might like to see it in the 6.5 neighborhood. Thanks again for all the great content. Robert, great question. You will get my attention every time you put ANY-A in the email. I think this goes back to what I said earlier in the show here. I think the main takeaways when it comes to that stat, and I think he listed it here, is that it's been very consistent here with him. But I do think, look, do I think in the long run it's going to have to be closer to the 6.2, 6.5 neighborhood, if we think this team's going to compete, in the playoffs? My short answer to that would be yes. But I do think that you have to, it's dangerous to look at this stat within a first 6 or 7 week period, because one game can shift it either way. Fortunately, we have not seen it. I think Justin Fields has played beyond, if it makes sense, and there's people are taking this stat now, and it's not old. It's getting more run now. They're assigning extended value to this stat based on dividing it by pass attempts and what the league average is and all like that. As a league, that the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat as a league average seems to be coming down a little bit on top of it, at least to start this season. It's dangerous to look at 3 games in, but my main takeaway is Elise Fields has been consistent with his numbers. I think the actual tape and what he's being asked to do matches what you're seeing from that stat. But then once again, I hate to cherry pick this thing. You know, you got a couple of these longer throws down the field have been taken away from him. Those would shift the number a little bit higher on top of it. Let's watch it. Well, I'll continue to watch it. Sounds like Robert's going to continue to watch it. But would you like to see it bump up a little bit higher? The way that you do that is you throw more passing touchdowns. You get a little bit more yak, specifically with what they're asking Fields to do. You limit the amount of sacks and the sack yardage. And, obviously don't throw interceptions.
Yeah, and just the eye test says he's playing well. And we know that week 1 game was super limiting because he didn't know he was starting until 2 hours before. And he thought he'd be the backup until that Thursday when Wilson aggravated the calf injury. So we know that was a really kind of unique situation there. And this offense has been building and growing and opening up and getting better overall. So as you said, stay tuned. And, we'll see how things go over the next, say, 3-4 weeks.
Here's the thing. If your defense keeps throwing up adjusted net yards per attempt stats of under 4 every week, as long as you're not posting a lower one on offense, you're probably going to win a handful of games within this. So, once again, the old rock fight. I love the rock fight analogy and all. Mike Tomlin is more than happy to come out of games winning 20-10 and whatever they've been the first couple of weeks here. But we will definitely be watching that, Robert, moving forward here. All right, I think we got through most of them here, Alex, and I know we're running a little bit long as usual. So anything else to add before we get out of here?
Nope. We'll come back on Friday and talk to you guys again.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit that ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. We will be back on Friday going over what the injury report looks like, looking ahead to the game against the Colts on Sunday on CBS. So, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.